Kakashi and Kabuto were set up in the Naruto series to have some sort of pseudo rivalry throughout the manga, or at least that's what it seemed like. But outside of one encounter and one actual conversation, they didn't really have any kind of actual showdown like we were teased they were gonna have. But these two in part 1 were considered very lethal and dangerous. From anyone from Zabuza to Orochimaru, these two got their recognition as very capable fighters. Both of them were said by two Sannin to be actually on the same level. So today, we're going to take a look at Kakashi and Kabuto and see how they stack up against each other throughout the timeline and see who has the most wins. But first, before we get started, if you haven't yet, be sure to hit the like button and smash that subscribe button and click the bell for more notifications. I really appreciate the support y'all have given to the channel, and I hope that you continue to do so as well, because I really enjoy putting out these content for you. I really hope you guys enjoy the videos that I'm putting out. I got way more ideas in the future. So again, click that bell for more notifications. With all that out of the way, let's go and get started. So before we get into the actual meat of the video, I want to say in structure beforehand how this video is going to go. As unlike how I do these normally, the every point in the series videos, I'm going to do this one in particular in an unconventional way, as in reverse. So instead of starting the matchups in part 1, we'll start at the end of the series in the War Arc and finish the showdown at the beginning of the series, starting with DMS Kakashi versus Sage Kabuto. So I'm pretty sure I don't even need to go into too much detail about this one, as I'm confident that most, if not all, the fandom can agree that Kabuto doesn't really stand a snowball's chance in hell against this Kakashi. I know I might be wasting my time and wasting y'all's time even putting this round in the video, and to be fair, me actually doing so might just seem like I'm trying to hype my boy up, but don't worry, I will balance it out in a second. But yeah, DMS Kakashi wrecks Kabuto's weekend. In fact, Kakashi is the one who sends Kabuto on vacation. Like, literally. All of Kabuto's Sound 5 jutsu are not going to be able to catch Kakashi, especially with Kakashi's visual perception being enhanced by way of both gaining an extra MS and 6-pass chakra. The white flashbang attack probably won't be much help either, as soon as Kakashi feels the effects, he could just calmly teleport and avoid it entirely. That might be assuming Kakashi won't be able to just phase his whole body out of the plane to avoid the effects as well, and I'm pretty sure the white extreme attack doesn't really last for 5 minutes anyway. The same will go for the inorganic animation for Kabuto as well. Like, it's not going to be quick enough to catch Kakashi before he just phases, or worst case, puts up a Susanoo. And speaking of Susanoo, I'd argue he wouldn't even need it, as he probably can just BFR Kabuto completely with his long-range Kamui. Now, there is an actual way Kabuto can counter the Kamui snipe as a whole. Now, assuming Kakashi is aiming for Kabuto's entire body, Kabuto can possibly reverse summon out of the Kamui dimension. I think this will be a good time to talk about the whole Kamui sealed dimension and potentially reverse summoning argument that people have debated over the years. So the data book labels the Kamui dimension as a sealed dimension, meaning that if you get sucked into Kamui, you cannot get out unless it's with Kamui. People have argued against it, saying things like FTG and reverse summoning can counter. While I'm not saying I don't understand the arguments being presented, I also think there's at least a couple of decent counter arguments. For FTG, while in Boruto it is shown that Boruto is able to cross dimensions using it, those said dimensions have not been labeled as sealed dimensions, not to my knowledge anyway. So the way I look at it, it's like Sasuke, Sakura, and Obito being able to transport to other dimensions in the War Arc, but not being able to travel into the common dimension specifically, at least not without Obito specifically teleporting them there. So as far as in the series, the only way that people have been able to both enter and exit Kamui is with Kamui itself. That also applies to reverse summoning. So in the case of Kabuto here, this would likely apply when it comes to reverse summoning either the Stinks or the Edo Tensei. So in my opinion, if Kabuto gets pulled in Kamui, he's stuck there and it'll count as a loss. Although to be honest, that's all assuming Kakashi couldn't just, snipe Kabuto's head clean off. I know the whole Kamui snipe your head off argument is a big source of contention among the fandom, but I think we can all agree that with DMS, it's a lot more likely. I guess the only real argument I can make for Kabuto here is Taiyuya's flute genjutsu, but I'm not so sure that would work either, as both Sasuke and Itachi were still able to use their MS while they were caught. I imagine it'd be like the same case for Kakashi, meaning that he could just still phase through Kabuto's attacks if he attempts to blitz him, or just use Kamui himself into the combo dimension. Also, I'm not entirely sure if Kakashi could technically still see Kabuto in the genjutsu, which I'm honestly going to assume probably not. But if he could, and if Kabuto still attempts to blitz Kakashi while he's trapped, Kakashi could just warp him away as he's running towards him. So yeah, but again, that's if he can still see Kabuto. Maybe I took too long with this section, but yeah, DMS Kakashi wins even without a Susanoo. Now, as I said earlier, to balance out me putting Sage Kabuto against DMS Kakashi, now we're going to talk about War Arc Kakashi with one Sharingan versus the same Sage Kabuto. Now, as much as I love Kakashi, this one kind of makes me cry a little bit. Like, it's not even a joke. Now, to be fair, it might depend on where they fight. For now, let's discuss how it would go if they fought in a cave, since it's the only place where you actually see Sage Kabuto fight. If it's in the cave, then yeah, Kakashi is the one with the snowball's chance in hell against Kabuto. Interestingly enough though, it could be altered depending on how Kabuto decides to start the fight. For example, if he starts the fight similar to how he did against Itachi and Sasuke, where he's playing it more sneaky long range, then he's got more of the advantage. His white extreme attack can blind and paralyze Kakashi in order to blitz him and take the win. Though a possible counter argument to that is something that may or may not be just straight headcanon, so feel free to tell me if it is. But depending on which one-eyed War Arc Kakashi we're talking about here, there's still a chance he can pull himself into Kamui to avoid the white extreme attack altogether. Because we see that twice Kakashi was able to pull himself out from the Kamui dimension. The first time was right after he found out Obito was Toby all along, and he got sucked in the Kamui and pulled himself out. And then later, right after Jubito was beaten and Sasuke was attempting to kill him. Now I know that Kamuing out of the Kamui dimension may not be entirely the same as being able to Kamui in, although I don't really think it's too different, to be honest. So even if you think those two feats may not be enough to convince you that it's possible, Madara, who has never used Kamui in his life, was able to Kamui himself into the Kamui dimension after taking Kakashi's eye. With that said, I feel as though there's at least a decent call to say that he could. I'm aware not everyone feels this way, so I'll say this. If it is possible, maybe Kakashi could avoid the white extreme attack and the subsequent blitz attack from Kabuto. I know that the attack blinds him, but maybe you could argue he may not even need to look directly at himself to warp himself away. I'm not really 100% sure on that. If it isn't possible, then Kakashi just gets blitzed anyway. Taiyui's fluke genjutsu is likely a good battle ender here too, because if it was able to catch both Itachi and Sasuke at the same time, it'll likely catch Kakashi as well. However, the Kamui teleporting argument that I just presented could also play a factor here. As I mentioned earlier, both Itachi and Sasuke were still able to use their MS even while they were caught in the genjutsu. So if Kakashi works fast enough, he might be able to warp himself into Kamui once he's caught to avoid any further damage. But outside of that though, yeah, Kabuto has just too much pressure to be able to put on Kakashi. Taiyui's genjutsu aside, the rest of the Sound 5 abilities in conjunction with Sage Mode is going to be a lot for Kakashi to deal with, not even mentioning Orochimaru's abilities to top it all off. There's only one thing I could say for Kakashi here, and it's what I alluded to earlier. It might depend on how Kabuto's attitude is and how he takes the fight from the start. For example, in the battle between Sasuke and Itachi, we see Kabuto is kind of high on himself, and that's not to say he doesn't have reason to be, as he's clearly one of the strongest fighters in the verse, but there is a bit of a flaw of acting this way. Now, this is very slim, but if Kabuto decides to not take Kakashi super serious from the jump and tries to just blitz him, Kakashi might be able to just pull him into Kamui right then and there. I can already see in the comments now that I'm gassing Kamui up, but I'm actually not entirely sure how to take Kamui in this situation myself either, because we saw that Kabuto was able to blitz Itachi, and while many people have debated over the years on Itachi's speed, he at least has the reaction time on par with KCM1 Naruto. And we see later on in the war, Kakashi being able to warp away things like a Rasengan from a KCM1 Naruto, and later on a KCM2 Naruto clone, and, by extension, being able to warp it away before Obito can even notice. We also see earlier on, before the war, that Kakashi was able to warp away Sasuke's Susanoo arrow at point blank, and we know that the Susanoo arrows are faster than Sasuke himself. Mind you, it was Kage Summit MS Sasuke, but still. Long story short, I say it's 50-50. I think it's possible if Kabuto decides to just straight up blitz Kakashi that he might get himself caught in the Kamui snipe, but I can also see Kabuto being able to avoid it with Sage mode and his sensory. And while Kakashi obviously has more than one shot of Kamui, the problem is if he misses the first shot, it's going to be a lot more difficult to land a following one when Kabuto is in a cave and is on the ready for it. Now, to be blunt, I don't think Kakashi's physical travel speed should be slept on either. Kakashi was reacting and counterattacking multiple V2 Jinchuriki and fighting alongside and on par with 6th Guy. We also see later on that Kakashi moves at a similar speed to KCM2 Minato, so I think at bare minimum there's a good call to say that his travel speed is relative to KCM1 Naruto. I said earlier that I discussed how the fight would be outside of a cave, and honestly, I think for the most part, the fight still remains the same. I mean, don't get me wrong, in an open field, it definitely presents a better opportunity for Kakashi to land a Kamui on Kabuto, but even if he's outside of a cave, he can still manipulate the terrain to his advantage, as well as the Sound 5 Jutsu, Taka's abilities, aside from Sasuke obviously, and Orochimaru's as well. Not to mention any snake summons that Kabuto can use if he needs to. I know it seemed I gave Kakashi maybe too much credit on this one, but even in this fight, as hopeless as it might seem, I always tried to give the underdog a good possible win rate if he can get it, and to see if he can possibly take the W. But I'm thinking for this one, Kabuto might take it like 7 out of 10 times. Now going on to Pain Arc Kakashi versus Baby Sage Kabuto. This round may or may not even need to be here, honestly, because but like what the heck, I'm just gonna go over it anyway. So more specifically, this is Kabuto during the Itachi Pursuit arc that had absorbed a little bit of Orochimaru's power versus the Kakashi that fought Pain. Now again, this might not be needed since there's like very little to go over in terms of Kabuto. Like Kabuto in this form literally just has one encounter, and that's with mid Shippuden Naruto after the Kakuzu fight, Hinata and Yamato. So as he just acquires a little bit of the Snake Sage mode that he would go on to master, it's unclear like what all he does or doesn't have in his arsenal. In fact, I maybe go so far as to say that the only difference between Kabuto here and the beginning of Shippuden is that he might be just a little bit like physically stronger overall, as he doesn't even really attempt to confront Naruto, Hinata, and Yamato, and possibly doesn't even feel like he'd get too far in fighting them. The only thing I can say that's a little bit impressive is that he was able to avoid being captured by them. So like maybe his speed or reaction time has improved. I'm not really sure. In regards to him fighting against Pain Arc Kakashi, I don't think he'd be able to fight him here either. At this point, Kakashi is entering that Sannin level territory, and Kabuto here pretty much still inferior to Orochimaru. Even though Orochimaru is considered the strongest of the Sannin, I'd still say this Kabuto gets beaten pretty handily by Jiraiya. Besides which, all that said, Kabuto has no answers here to Kamui if it came down to it. While Kabuto's speed might have improved, Kakashi at this point has the reaction time to warp away Susanoo arrows at point blank. Without using Kamui, I'd say like, yeah, maybe Kabuto could swap hands with Kakashi, but with how skilled Kakashi is in taijutsu, I don't think Kabuto would want to engage too long in a close quarters with Kakashi. Especially when he feels like he's like not too confident in fighting Naruto in hand-to-hand either. So yeah, I'd give this round to Kakashi like 9 or 10 out of 10 times. Going on to beginning of Shippuden Kakashi versus beginning of Shippuden Kabuto. So if the last entry it was in Kakashi's favor already, then I feel like beginning of Shippuden isn't going to be much different. While both fighters technically lose something in a way, the loss is more substantial for Kabuto than it is for Kakashi, because all that Kakashi loses is just some experience in using Kamui. And while that might be a bit of a hassle to lose, and would always help in a fight like this, Kamui isn't something I think is going to be needed here. So if we say for a second that the statements in part 1 about Kakashi and Kabuto being on the same level were true, then Kakashi should definitely be above Kabuto here. And while it may be unfair or disingenuous to assume Kabuto didn't train during the 3-year time skip between part 1 and Shippuden, we do get that confirmation from Kakashi through his MS usage and his battle performance in general. In the anime and somewhat in the manga, even the beginning of the Shippuden we're shown that Kakashi is trained enough to at least overcome his base Sharingan fatigue issues, as he fights Naruto and Sakura for a while, at least in the anime. In the manga, it doesn't seem like quite as long, but he uses like 3 to 4 elemental jutsu, and he fights all of Naruto's shadow clones, and then uses the primary lotus like right after that, and he still didn't even fall over after the fight was all done. And while Kakashi is shown to have some growth over the time skip, Kabuto is not shown or said to have done the same. And besides which, and maybe this is just me, but Kabuto doesn't really come across as someone who regularly trains. To be fair, I could be wrong, like maybe he trained with Sasuke every now and then, I mean who knows. If I had to guess, I'd say he's bare minimum slightly stronger than he was when he fought Naruto and Tsunade in the Tsunade Search Arc in part 1. So without getting into that territory just yet, what I will say for this round is that Kakashi should be comfortably above Kabuto here. So like with the last entry, I'll probably give this one to Kakashi like 9 to 10 out of 10 times. Going on to part 1 Kakashi versus part 1 Kabuto. Now this is the one. This is the point where the statements are thrown and hated by fans. So let's start this whole thing off with both of the said statements. So in 2 separate arcs by 2 separate people, Kakashi and Kabuto are said to be on the same level. And this isn't like an implication from the 2 people. No, they straight out, like pretty much flat out say it. In the manga, Orochimaru says, "You're strong, but just about the same level as Kakashi." Jiraiya in the Search arc says to Naruto, and Kabuto is on the same level as Kakashi. Just to put it in the video, the English dub translation of each statement goes as follows. Orochimaru says to Kabuto, "You can't possibly hope to kill me. Even if you did have the courage, it's worthless. You're no stronger than Kakashi." Jiraiya says to Naruto, "And Four Eyes over there can go toe-to-toe with Kakashi if he had to." So the general idea is that these 2 are comparable. My opinion, I think the statements specifically are to indicate that they're both Jonin level. Like, they both have tool sets in order to handle and beat most other Jonin class ninja, but that they both aren't strong enough to go up against Kage level or Sannin level fighters. Now, as we all know, statements and feats are 2 different things. Especially statements mostly coming from part 1, as they get retconned more so than I care to admit. As I bring this up to say that Kabuto pretty much went on to handle Tsunade later in part 1. Now, while there's a couple of different ways you could look at this, it may or may not paint a pretty clear picture as to how to scale Kabuto. For starters, there's a chance that Tsunade wasn't really taking Kabuto as serious as she should have. When you think about it, that does kind of make sense. For her fear of blood, she may or may not have known how long she'd be able to last in a fight, and she may have wanted to save her strength and chakra for when she had to fight Orochimaru, which is fair, because we saw that even without his arms, Orochimaru is annoying to deal with, to say the very least. Second, while Tsunade is definitely a tank and someone who most people wouldn't and shouldn't get in close quarters with, she doesn't really specialize in taijutsu per se. Again, she's definitely good at taijutsu, but she's mostly known for her strength specifically more so than how skilled she is in taijutsu, not like how my guy is. And to be honest, this might be why Kabuto went on to give Tsunade so much trouble even with her holding back. As he even says, taijutsu isn't what he excels at either. Now on the other hand, even though Kakashi doesn't necessarily have a reputation for his taijutsu either, he has trained for years with someone who does, which is again my guy. And being that Kakashi does train, probably more so than Kabuto even at this point, and with his Sharingan, in my opinion, I say that if they were to go close, like toe-to-toe in close quarters, that Kakashi would have the edge. When it comes to stamina and intelligence, I'd say they're both comparable. If anything, I'd be more willing to give it to Kakashi a tad, being that he's a bit older and has more experience. Although Kabuto being a master of medical ninjutsu, I'd actually give it to Kabuto to be able to outlast Kakashi in terms of stamina. Even more so if Kabuto's packing some food pills with him too. At the end of the day, it might come down to if you think Kakashi's assassin type style can overcome Kabuto's medical ninjutsu combat. For example, whether or not you feel like could get the killing blow more efficiently, lightning blade or chakra scalpel. I mean, we obviously know the Raikiri can kill Kabuto, but Kabuto also says that he could have potentially killed Tsunade with the chakra scalpel. There's also the problem of Kabuto being able to summon giant snakes. I mean, Kakashi's bloodhounds aren't going to be enough for those. When it comes down to it, the only thing I could say for Kakashi in that case is that Kakashi might have something in his arsenal of 1000 jutsu, similar to Dark Swamp, that he could use to deal with snakes. Conversely though, if Kabuto hasn't summoned the snakes yet, Kakashi could summon the hounds first and help Kakashi close the distance and finish Kabuto off. I know the bloodhounds are often treated as a joke in verse battle videos, But here they actually might provide some help, especially if Kakashi summons a couple clones to help as well. When it comes down to it, all it's going to take is just one Raikiri to the chest and it's done for. Now, I'm not going to be that guy and play devil's advocate and say that just because Naruto was able to catch his hand and hit him with the Rasengan, that automatically means that Kakashi is going to be able to do the same thing. Because Kabuto was likely not taking Naruto 100% serious. In fact, I think it's more likely in this scenario because than it was that Tsunade wasn't taking Kabuto seriously, because Kabuto was like actively talking crap and talking down to Naruto. Like it was about as blatant as you can get. But it does at least help convince me that Kakashi could make a strategy or a tactic to catch Kabuto's hand the same way Naruto did and hit him with the good old Raikiri to the chest. Plus, I think there's good evidence to suggest that Kabuto felt like he himself wouldn't be able to take Kakashi as he just ran away instead of fighting him. And while that might be just chalked up to, maybe he thought that more ninja were going to come running, Kabuto took out 3 Anbu members and like there was nothing, and even told Kakashi that maybe next time we should station at least 10 Anbu Black Ops. So the fact that he still felt the need to run away from Kakashi might actually just say who would win this encounter anyway. Plus, Kabuto does have a ability where he's able to concentrate his chakra at a certain point of his body in order to heal it before a jutsu is even landed on him. This case, Raikiri. So if Kabuto is quick enough, he might be able to preemptively heal himself from a Raikiri. I'm not entirely sure like how useful that's going to be against someone like Kakashi, but it is worth bringing up. Also, Genjutsu is definitely something that could play in Kakashi's favor. Now, with Kabuto being so precise with his chakra and decent in medical ninjutsu, he might be able to concentrate his chakra enough to be able to avoid Genjutsu. On that, I will say if it's a base Genjutsu, I give it to Kabuto to avoid it, but if it's a Sharingan-based Genjutsu, I'd probably give it to Kakashi more often than not. I do understand if y'all think I'm probably gassing Kakashi up and hyping him up too much, which I get it. I don't mean to sound like that. I do think that this is going to be a tough fight either way. Like, I don't think Kabuto will necessarily get curb stomped, because Kabuto, even at this point, is pretty intelligent and is pretty lethal. I mean, even Orochimaru and Jiraiya said it themselves. So, like I said, I think Kakashi does take this probably mid-diff. 1 to 10, I'd say probably like a 7 or 8 out of 10 times. Like I said, I think Kabuto does give him a fight, as he is meticulous and he's pretty lethal with his medical ninjutsu as well. But with the battle experience, Sharingan precog, and the Raikiri and the careful planning, I just think Kakashi has more chances to take Kabuto out here. Not to mention, unlike Tsunade, who she does have AoE attacks, but Kakashi also has plenty of long-range jutsu in his arsenal as well, which would give Kabuto, who is mostly a, close-range fighter, some pretty decent trouble to say the least. So there y'all have it, Kakashi versus Kabuto at every point in the series. I think like the one that's going to give me the most trouble is probably the War Arc Kakashi with the one Sharingan versus Sage Kabuto. But at the end of the day, that's what I think. Let me know in the comments what y'all think. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the bell for more notifications. Thank you all for watching. Until the next one, LightningSnow, out.